All right, I was a little preemptive there, but now we are ready to go with this interview, not a run. So take it away.
Hey everybody, coming to check out the Spyrothon Marathon. This is a really a great event so far, and it's going to be some good stuff coming up later on. We've got a very exciting interview for you guys right now with the what I'm going to call the Spyro historian, HWD. We're just gonna talk a little bit about some of the different things that he has done for the community, including finding different prototypes and different basically historical documents that sort of give us a timeline of how these games were created. It's super cool stuff, and you guys will really enjoy some of the stuff that he has to say. So it's really good to have you here. I'm really excited to talk to you about this stuff.
Yes, good to be here. I've never heard anyone refer to me as like a Spyro historian before, but I think that sums it up quite well, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't let you know if that was okay ahead of time, but I thought about it this morning and I was like, this is perfect. What had originally gotten you into Spyro, glitch hunting and prototypes in particular?
So I guess I've always had like a bit of a fascination with that kind of thing. I suppose it's because um, the Spyro games were like my favorite games when I was growing up. Um, I played them like really, really excessively. So when I found out years later, oh, well, these games that you've played inside and out, there's actually like loads more to them. I was like, what? There's like so much more there. And I guess exploring what some of the known things were, like the Dino Mines arena and all the nonsense with like the whirlwind in Midnight Mountain. Um, I guess I was a bit like, like there's all this stuff, but like, what if there's more? Because there's
Mhm.
got to be like a lot more where this stuff's come from. And and around that time, I'd also been exploring some of the Sonic 2 prototypes as well. Like some of my first videos that I did on my channel were messing around in some of the Sonic 2 prototypes. People still comment on those like ones, even though like really, really poorly made Windows Movie Maker
Oh,
videos.
yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, I found those really interesting as well because Sonic 2 was another game which I really enjoyed when I was younger, and finding out years later that there were a whole bunch of levels from that game which didn't make it into the final game was like, you know, oh, that one of my favorite games has so much more to it.
So what brought you into prototype research itself for Spyro? What interests you most about it?
Yeah, so I guess uh, you know, working on that groundwork of just being really interested in the weird quirks that this game has and some of the cut content,
Mhm.
I started looking into the demo versions a bit more. And um, for those that aren't aware, the demo builds of like PlayStation games were like pretty much always built from like an earlier version of the source code. So they would be kind of like prototypes in and of themselves, but stripped down versions that don't have everything. But even if they don't have like most of the game, they still tend to have quite a lot of stuff which they don't want to show you. And so when I started finding this out and I started trying to strip apart all of these different demo builds, and also I tried like identifying how many different demo builds there were and the order that they fell in, the general kind of timeline, because it was kind of stuff that no one had documented particularly well.
Mhm. How do you like? Could you go maybe a little bit into your process about how you sort of find that sort of first thing that leads you into that kind of wealth of knowledge?
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit tricky in that
Mhm.
there's not necessarily like a surefire process that someone can take to go down that kind of route. But I guess in my case, it was just helpful that Spyro was a game that I've played for a long time and I really 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 enjoy, and it just happened that there was quite a lot of knowledge there which people didn't document particularly well. And so when I started with not just demo builds, but also like pre-release materials, so I would like go through websites on like the web archive and magazines, which are also like on the web archive, really useful resource for like anyone that wants to, who wants to get into like researching a game. You might not have too much success with Spyro because I think it quite a lot of it's sort of been done by this point, but like it does always help. There's like things have been found just by random people going, you know what, I'm going to search for something, and they find something which no one's found before. Like,
yeah, there's like a promotional photo that at the time was just, to show the game a little bit, but when you look back at it, it's something that's crazy, that's like completely different, or at least adjusted a little bit, some interesting tidbit from the game.
right, yeah, exactly. Like there's so many of those out there, and one of the things that a person can do to try and get into this stuff is try and find them, like, looking through magazines and websites and things, and finding what all of these different screenshots and videos that were used in early development were. And from there, what I did, at least, is I tried to like build up a timeline of each of the game's developments. Um, so if there were like a bunch of screenshots which appear maybe in like loads of different magazines, I can go, oh, well, that's just probably like a generic press bundle that they would send out to a bunch of people, and like maybe they're probably all like the same build of the game, and like some evidence in the photos might suggest that as well. And so I'd
Oh,
like
yeah.
add that to my timeline, and then I go, oh, there's like demo builds, add those to my timeline, and there's also like a few cases where like websites would report on like unique builds, where they'd actually like received like a version of the game and reported on it, and then that would go in the timeline as well, and I'd like compare all the different differences, and it gives you like a really like solid picture of like the game's whole development.
Yeah, do you have you're free to talk about any little interesting things regarding like dev menus and cheats if you'd like.
Oh yeah, so in terms of like dev menus, there's not really like anything that I know of, although there are like some one of the screenshots is very weird, in that for quite a while during development, the early builds of Spyro 3 used Spyro 2's title screen, but without it looks like it doesn't have the logo. So there's just this really weird screenshot of like in a Spyro 3 preview of Spyro standing in Skelos Badlands with like some numbers in the top right. And they just went, yeah, that screenshot's fine.
Yeah,
Put that
that's
in the
gonna work.
magazine.
See, I would have been racking my brain if I would have seen that as a kid, because I remember I would look through instruction manuals of all the games that I had all the time, and there would be little things at times where you could tell it was clearly like they would pull a screen from something when they were working on a prototype and decided that was a good idea to throw in that magazine or the instruction manual even at times, and it wouldn't match up with what I would experience in the game, and I'd be like, is there something I'm missing here, or do I need to dive deeper in this? I would do that all the time. So it's
Yeah, like just recently I bought the Prima guides for Spyro 1, 2, and 3.
oh yeah, that'd be so cool.
So I was looking through the screenshots of those, basically trying to figure out like they must have used like early versions of the game or like late review builds or something. And like all of the Spyro 2 screenshots still have Spyro 1 Sparks model in them. So they must have changed that really, really late. And
Yeah.
like the Spyro 3 screenshots like mostly looks like the final game, but the very last screenshot they put in has the like a screenshot of like the last egg you get, but it has like completely the wrong name. It's like called Zanjana instead of Yin Yang. I think it's like after the DC Wonder twins or something.
Oh.
And like the surrounding text around it is like, yes, once you've done all this stuff, you get Yin Yang, and it's just the screenshots like, no, it's Zanjana.
Yeah, because I mean, I mean that's how it would work, right? They'd want to get the Prima guide basically out at the same time the game would come out, so they'd probably just throw them all this sort of press release or press kit stuff that might not be super relevant, but they still need to have the game be accurate at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess they probably had like the final game and then like either lots of screenshots or like a very like a few very late builds maybe where they'd
Probably
like
some leap builds, yeah.
yeah, so that they could like start writing it in advance and then just use like the final game as like a way of verifying everything, I guess.
So, do you have any advice for somebody that might want to start doing this as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say if you want to get into researching prototypes and that sort of thing, I would probably start on the end of investigating like if the game has any demo builds that were like made public, or even if it has any like already released prototypes. That's sometimes games get released, or like prototypes get released, and they kind of like fall under the radar. So if it's a game that you're interested in, you find out, oh, it's actually got like a release prototype already. Investigating those differences and documenting them is a good idea, I think. And
Mm.
on top of that, investigating the pre-release materials like magazines and websites and things, building a picture of like the development timeline and doing your own kind of like research and documentation. I think it's really useful for getting your head around how these things worked and like what was going on behind the scenes and making a sort of name for yourself as well as someone that's like interested in that stuff. And
Mhm.
then where that can go from there, to potentially like finding new unreleased prototypes as well. It's a bit of a leap, and there's not really necessarily like a really clear way to look for these kind of things.
Sure.
But it's something you kind of pick up, I guess, in a sense,
Yeah.
while you're doing all of this.
Do you have anything else exciting kind of coming up?
Nothing that I can talk about yet.
Mhm.
There's things happening. There's things coming up, but nothing that I can uh, divulge as of yet.
Sure. If people were interested in sort of following anything that does come up, do you have sorts of like locations where you kind of keep all of this?
Yeah, so I think pretty much everything that I find goes on my YouTube channel. So that's Hwd45. Um, some of it doesn't go on the YouTube channel if it's not particularly significant. I tend to put everything that I find on the cutting room floor though. So if you're aware of tcrf.net, I try and
Mhm.
put quite a lot of my findings on there as well.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with it until the recent sort of prototypes that had come out from you. Um, but there's definitely a lot of stuff. I need to go through it a little bit more because there's a lot there.
Yeah, I've kind of neglected like the Spyro 2 pages a little bit, but the Spyro
Mhm.
1 and 3 pages are quite solid, I think.
Well, cool. So, as a lot of our viewers are excited to see, there's going to be a showcase of the Dream prototype that you had recently released, uh, shown by Farnia, and you'll be co-commentating. Is there anything, without revealing too much, that people should be excited to see for that?
Yeah, so this is it's a version of the game from about 2 months before the final game. So there's quite a few bits. Well, there's some bits which are relatively finalized, but there's quite a lot of really weird differences throughout. So we're talking things like loads of different gem locations are different. The home world requirements, like the things you need to get to each of the worlds, are different. There's a few completely unfinished levels. Um, some changed mechanics and things. So yeah, it's all interesting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you said 2 months, right? So I don't know. That's still a lot of time for different things to change. So I
Yeah.
think people will be really interested to see all these little differences that eventually um, came to be the game that we know today. So that's going to be really cool to see all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially because Insomniac were kind of famous for working really, really quickly. So if you imagine 2 months and working quickly, it's quite a lot
It's
of differences.
Well, that's fascinating to me as well, just because, from what I know of them working at that time, I mean, they were doing a lot of different things that kind of weren't really done in video games at that time. Um, so to see them be able to do that and work quickly and basically create a series that we love is pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. It's really impressive.
Well, thank you so much, HWD, for talking with me today. It was very enlightening. There was so many different things that I discovered, and I've been playing this game constantly for the last 6 years. So super awesome stuff. We really look forward to seeing more of that explanation with the prototype showcase with Farnia a little bit later in the marathon.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed being here and taking the opportunity to just talk at length about Spyro.
Yep. So yeah, if anybody is interested to hear more of this, like I said, there will be a prototype showcase with HWD here as well as Farnia, and they will be showcasing one of the prototypes that has come out recently, and there'll be some really cool stuff there as well. So be sure to tune into that.
Okay, that was an awesome interview with HWD on prototypes. Reminder that if you did enjoy that interview, there will be a full version of that interview up on the Spyrothon YouTube page. It should be there. And if you are interested in that prototype, reminder that that prototype showcase is coming up later tonight. But before that, what's coming up next? We have the original trilogy 337% trifecta. This is going to be really hype. Really getting excited for this. It's going to be a really good run to see.